I'm Carrie, Kathryn Calder, Kerr. I was born on December the 3rd, 1933, in the middle of the winter, and my parents already had 6 children, and everybody in our community wondered how in the world and why would they ever want a number 7 child. But I was lucky enough to come, and I was named after my grandmother Hacking. Her name is Carrie Claire, and I was named after my grandma Calder, whose name was Kathryn. So I was named Carrie Kathryn Calder. And then I married a Kerr, so now I'm Carrie Kathryn Calder Kerr. And born the 7th child in a family of 8 children, actually. I had a younger brother that came after I was born. We grew up in Vernal, Utah, and lived downtown. We call it the downtown home because we had the farm was where we eventually, my folks built a house, and we lived out there. But I lived in the downtown home till I was 8 years old. And then my father built a home out at the farm. It was about a mile, well, about 2 miles away, really. And we built a home there, and then I lived there all my life until I went away to BYU to school. Graduated from UNA High School in 1952. I had a lot of good friends in high school. When you go to school with each other for 12 years, you make some good friends. And I just happened to belong to a group of good friends. We had about 3 or 4 of us that were very close, and then we all belonged to a group of about 12, 15, and then whenever we had a party, there was always at least 20 of us. And my friends, we used to meet at Christmas time and had a dinner at about the 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. We started to meet with each other for a dinner in somebody's home. And they continued that after I went to BYU, after I taught school and got married. My friends continued to invite me home at Christmas time, and we'd meet together and have a Christmas dinner. That's the kind of childhood I had, where I was really comforted with good friends. My sister Mary Alice didn't have a group of friends in her class. She'd try to be friends here and there, but nobody had the same sort of standards to live by. And so I was fortunate to have some good friends. They still are good friends. We still call each other on the telephone and still have class reunions. We have one every year. We used to have them every 5 years, but now that we're older, we have to hurry and have them every year so that we just get together for an afternoon and visit. So I've had good friends all my life. I grew up in Vernal, and I won't even talk about all my family and the goodness of being raised in Vernal and going to Grandma and Grandpa Hacking's every Sunday for dinner, and cousins. That was another fortunate thing in my life. I went to BYU after I graduated from high school. I graduated from BYU living off campus the first year. Second year, I lived in the family home apartments. They were some kind of family apartments, and then they changed the name to Heritage Halls. But at first it was meant to teach us all how to run a family in a home. And so they were called the Family Living Center or something. I can't quite remember the name of it. But they soon became Heritage Halls. And now, the past year or two, they've torn those down. To me, they're still new buildings, but I lived in the first year. It's my second year I lived on campus. The first year I lived off a campus, and I climbed 122 steps to go up to the campus, and then 122 steps to go home for lunch, and then I'd go back to school and climb up those 122 stairs again. That kept me young. And after I graduated from BYU in elementary education, then I got a job with the Salt Lake School District, and lived with Beth Bryson and Carolyn Weiniger. They graduated the same with me. They were my good friends, and we got an apartment and lived together and taught school. Well, the first day of teaching school, nobody ever trained us what to do the first day of teaching school, and so we worked that out together, and we survived our first days. They each taught at a different school than I did. We came back home from the first day of teaching and said, now what are we going to do tomorrow? And that soon we were able to take off and learn the curriculums that we were to follow, and just we all seemed to enjoy teaching very much. But we were also dating and looking for the Mr. Right, and we went to church, and Beth and Carolyn were called to be on the Stake Young Women's Board. I was called to be on the Stake Sunday School Board. So when we went, every month we'd go visit another ward, a different ward. As a stake board, we'd go visit these other wards in the stake. Well, we had a university ward, and we went up there to visit, but they didn't have a primary. But I went, they needed me to go anyway, and so we all went up to the university to attend this stake ward, their ward conference. And that's where I met Dwayne. He was in the bishopric up there, and he asked me if I needed to ride home, and I needed to ride home. And so then he asked me if I'd like to go to the stake president's home that night after sacrament meeting. We had church in the morning, and then we had sacrament meeting in the afternoon, the evening. And their bishopric was having a get-together with the stake president. And he asked me if I would go with him to that stake president's. He needed a date. So that was our first date. And we went on a few dates, and I knew I didn't want to do any more dating with anybody else. I had a date or two, and I called one of them and said, you know, I'd just be wasting your time and my time. I think I'm not interested to date anymore. I found somebody else. And that was sort of my breakaway from the dating days. I'd had all the dating I ever wanted. I was fortunate to have dates. I was also left some weekends without a date too, like everybody else. So I knew the heartbreak of being left home alone. But Dwayne and I dated, started after school started, I think in November. I went home at Thanksgiving time, and I was sure hopeful that boy was going to come back to school and date me again. And he did. We dated. He took me home to Tremont. His folks were gone. They were in England serving as mission presidents over the whole European mission. And they didn't know how long they were going to be there. They'd call a mission president. He never did know. It wasn't 3 years like it is now. And so after we dated and fell in love and got engaged, we decided we'd get married. We didn't know when those folks would be home, so we just went ahead with our plans. We got married in July, and they got home in October. So we were glad we got married so I could take care of him that summer. He and Rolf was home from his mission, and we had the three of us in the farmhouse where you, Dallin, are living now, have been living. I spent my first 2 months there of my marriage and worked out of that kitchen, and fed the hired men who came to help, the boy from the mission that came to teach me how to make apple pie. We had a boy, an 11-year-old boy, came and stayed 2 weeks with us. And he taught me how to make pie. And that's a very good pie crust. We went out and picked the apples off the ground and peeled them and cut the worms out and made apple pie together. I guess I lived July, August. The end of August, I went back to Salt Lake to teach school. And was down there about a month. I traveled back home to Tremont on the weekend. Then I'd go back to Salt Lake and teach for a week, and then I'd go back home. And one of my students gave me a little cat. And that kept me good company. But as soon as my husband came to live with me, he said, it's either that cat or me. I never heard such a mean thing. Well, I did want to keep my husband, so I had to take the kitty cat back to my little student and tell her that I wasn't able to keep it. Because he's like his mom and his Aunt Nana. They did not like kitty cats. But I've taught him differently. We spent a couple of years in Salt Lake with him going to medical school. I taught the first year. The second year, I did some substitute teaching, because by that time we'd had Darren, and I didn't want to leave a baby full time. Had a good baby tender, but I only substitute taught 2 or 3 days a week. Then that made it doable for me. After a couple of years in medical school, we graduated, and he graduated from medical school on a day when we were outside for the graduation, and a storm came up, and they had the speaker. By that time, Grandpa Kerr was home, and he was to say the opening prayer. A Catholic was to say the closing prayer, a Catholic priest. Well, it started to rain, and the Catholic priest said, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. And they said, here's your diplomas. And they threw them out like this. Oh, go to the building. They said, go to these different buildings. And so we went to the place where the medical students were to get their diplomas, and they threw them out. And when they called Dwayne's name, he wasn't there yet somehow. And so we raised our hand, and they threw his diploma out to us. That's how he graduated from medical school. It was heartbreaking. He didn't get any honors at all to walk across the stage or anything. Just threw that diploma out. And then for his internship, we went to the McKay-D. We went to the D hospital, the old D hospital in Ogden. And it has since been torn down, and a new hospital, the McKay-D, was built, and it's now used for doctor's offices, and they have a new McKay Hospital. I don't know if it's the McKay-D or not, but we lived in Ogden for a year and learned to really like Ogden. Their shopping and I had $5. We earned money when we were in Ogden, and we gave ourselves each $5 a month to spend on ourselves. It was the best $5 I've ever had. I planned and worked to see for sure where I wanted to put my $5. I remember one of the things I did was buy a robe so that I could cover up when I needed to get up in the night with a baby and have a nice warm robe to sleep in, and a pair of shoes, just things that we needed, you know. You go through medical school a couple of years and don't have any money. I earned the only money, and so I was the only one paying tithing. But I was sick and couldn't fast, so he did the fasting and I did the tithing. let's see, what else did we do? Well, we were at, while we were in Ogden, was the year that we were deciding where he was going to go practice his medicine. And we looked at Vernal, where my folks were, and looked at Tremont, where his folks were, and decided, well, maybe we'll practice in Heber. That was kind of between the two. But while we were making that decision, both my father, he passed away in September the 9th, and my mother passed away in December the 10th, just 3 months and 1 day apart from each other. And so it didn't make much sense to go to Vernal anymore. And we just decided we'd go to Tremont to practice and open a new office, and that's what we did. I think we moved there in 1960 or 61, can't remember. Colleen was born in 62. So anyway, we rented a home for 5 years. When we moved to Tremont, we had Darren and Brian. And when we moved into the new home, after 5 years, we had Darren and Brian and Colleen and Cammie, and was expecting Kimberly, our 5th child. Cammie was a baby crawling in the sawdust, I remember. So we built the white brick A-frame home and moved there, and been very happy with that home and raising our family there. It has served us very well. Kimberly was born when we were in the home. We moved there in May, and she was born in October. And then 3 years later, Carrie was born. Most of those babies came 2 years apart. But after baby number 5, I said, I gotta have a little rest. So we did. And then we got number 6 there. But we had 6 children within a 10-year period. And we didn't know at the time what a blessing that was to us. But soon after Carrie was born, I went through the change of life. And that was a surprise to us, because I was 37 years old at that time. Could not have any more babies. And my pregnancies were hard on me. So I was grateful that I got 6 children out of that. But as we took that 6th baby out of the hospital and walked across the parking lot to the car, we said, we've given up everything. We could keep having children. That's all we do anyway, is just take care of kids. No time to ride a bike or to work at the adoption center or anything like you kids. But raised those 6 children. We had 6 children. And loved being in Tremont. Our neighbors, our ward members, were their teachers at school. They had very fine people to be their teachers. And our children grew up. Our 2 sons went on missions. Darren went to Ecuador, Quito, Ecuador, and Brian went to, the Dominican Republic. They divided it. He went somewhere before, and then they put the 2 missions together, the Dominican Republic and
Haiti, maybe?
Not Haiti, but they are
Cuba?
Not Cuba. Puerto Rico. He was called to the Puerto Rico mission, and then they added the Dominican Republic to it, and I think he went over to there also. And came home. Our kids, a lot of them worked on the river, on the Boy Scout camp. Then they gradually each got married. I think Brian got married first, and then Darren. And then a while later, Kimberly and Colleen got married the same summer. So we were busy with weddings. Oh no, first in there, was Cammie. You'll have to look up these dates. I'm getting out of line here. But we got those children all married within a reasonable time. And then Dwayne gave me a watch for my retirement from raising kids. Are you kidding? They all brought children and husbands back. And it was just a house full of people all over again. Never got a break. So, and it was great fun. I mean, if you cook it, they will come. And they came. We had wonderful times together. Summertime, we had a little swimming pool, kiddie pool, and then later we had a larger pool of 15 feet across. We'd fill that up with water, and those kids would swim around a circle inside that little swimming pool. We had more fun in that swimming pool than most people do in a beautiful cement pool. This was on top of the ground. When we moved out to the farm where we live now, when we bought the property, we signed the papers and went home. The baby tender was tending our children. We went home and got our children, went and picked up hamburgers, and then went out and sat in the middle of the weeds in the trees out front and had a picnic on our property. And it was fun.
That's fun.
And that winter, it snowed so deep and the wind blew so much, they never even graded that road that was in front of our house. It was just left for the winter. We'd go out and sleigh ride down the drifts. It was just big drifts to sleigh ride down. But it haven't had winters like that. Now you need to ask me some questions.
What is your biggest accomplishment in life?
I think my biggest accomplishment is raising those 6 children and surviving. Yeah, I'm a survivor. Of raising children and running a household, and that was important for me to be at home. My generation, all of our mothers when we were growing up stayed at home and were homemakers. But somewhere in my growing up that changed over and women started to go to work. Well, they went to work during World War II. All the men were called to the army. World War II got people started working outside the home. And my mother taught music for a while at the Mazer School to help earn money. And she also knit a sweater for the Red Cross. If you knit they'd give you the yarn to knit a vest for the men who were fighting over in Europe. It was a khaki-colored vest, and they gave you instructions of how to do it. And if you did that and handed it in, then they'd give you enough yarn to knit one for your own son or for someone else. So she knit a Red Cross one, and then she knit one for Glenn. And I was in the 4th grade, and my teacher was knitting vests to send, and so she taught some of us girls that were interested. She taught us how to do a vest for ourselves. I didn't have money for yarn, but I took an old sweater. Mother helped me find a sweater that had been handed down to us, and we unraveled the sweater. Well, the sweater unraveled across from side to side, and then it ended. So then I'd get the next row, and I'd unravel it, and have to tie those 2 pieces of yarn together. Well, by the time we unraveled all that, it was so crinkly and wrinkly, but Mother put it in some water and let it hang over a chair, and the weight of the water and it drying took all the wrinkles out of it. And then I was able to put it in a ball and knit it. You start at the bottom of the sweater and knit it up forward over the shoulders, and then you make it into a V-neck. And I'd done all of that and done the sleeves, finished those off, done the V-neck, and was coming down to the front, almost ready to put the ribbing, start the ribbing, And that's when we moved from one home to the next. And somewhere in the move, it got put, my mother thinks, probably burned in a fire. We never could find it. It maybe just got packed up with something that went out to the burn barrel. And anyway, I was disappointed in that. But before I ever knit the sweater, I have to tell you, I wanted to knit so badly, and Mother had some leftover khaki yarn from her sweaters that she'd knit. She gave it to me, but she had the only knitting needles. So I went downstairs to my father's workbench, and I found big long needles like this, big long nails. And so I learned how to put the yarn on the nails and how to knit with the nails. I knit myself a pair of mittens. My teacher helped me to learn how to do the ribbing and how to make the thumb and the front and the back. And I made myself a pair of mittens out of khaki yarn with nails. So if you don't have anything, then you hurry and get busy and make something work for you. You didn't know you were going to get so much good stuff,
No,
did
this
you?
is perfect. This is what we want.
Yeah.
So what is your biggest regret in life?
I don't know that I have a big regret. I have been blessed with the knowledge of the gospel. I've been blessed with the ability to believe in the truth. I've been blessed to make good decisions, I think. I'm sure I've made a lot of mistakes, but I keep forgetting those. And you wanted to know my what?
Biggest regret. Do you have any
Biggest
regrets in
regret?
life?
No. I regret that, I didn't try harder in school or get better grades or such. But I really had a fun life. I really had a good life. I've had a happy life. I haven't been, had a lot of problems. We didn't have money when we were growing up, but I tended children. I tended a lot of babies, so I earned good money that way to help get me through 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade. By the time I got to senior year, I didn't do much babysitting. I was way too busy in school. But my junior high years, I was everybody's favorite baby tender. I tended for quite a few people around town. And just had a good life. Didn't see a lot of movies. Didn't do a lot of things that cost money because we simply didn't have it. We grew everything we ate on the farm. We grew our meat. Dad butchered it, and we wrapped it and put it in the locker uptown or freezer when we finally got one. Potatoes and carrots, we had a big pit for them, and we picked the fruit, canned the raspberries, the beans, the chickens and eggs. We milked cows every morning and every night. We don't do that in today's world because you don't do that. And but we grew everything we ever ate, I think. My husband Dwayne says, I tell him we didn't have spaghetti. He says that's the cheapest food you could eat. I said no, but you had to buy it from the store, and we didn't buy from the store. We bought Jell-O, and in the wintertime my mother'd buy lettuce. I remember. But we didn't even have celery type of thing. But lettuce, sometimes she'd buy that, and then we'd take the lettuce leaf off and wash all those lettuce leaves and pass them on a plate around the table, and everybody ate a leaf of lettuce. But first you sprinkled sugar on it, and then you folded it up, and then that folded lettuce you ate. That was the lettuce salad. Now, in the spring, she'd grow lettuce and chop it up and put cream and sugar and lemon juice to make a dressing for it. And we called that Joe's cow feed. My brother Joe loved it, and so we called it Joe's cow feed. We ate that kind of lettuce, but in the wintertime she'd buy that head of lettuce, and that's what we'd eat for a salad. Never fed that to my kids. Didn't know any. They never knew any of that. That was different, I guess.
Is there any advice you want to give to your posterity?
Well, my experience tells me if you, as a mother, will cook 3 meals a day or put them on, have hot dinner, hot something, and bring your family together all at once, and maybe 3 times a day, you can't do in today's world because of the busyness and the going and such, but you have to balance that out. Make sure your family's together somewhere so you eat together. That keeps a family together better than anything else I know. It takes a lot of effort on the mother's part, on the family's part, on individual people to be together for at least 1 meal a day, and help to prepare it, help to clean up after it, be responsible for all of that, but have a time of talking and sharing and being together. And in my home where I grew up, we always had family prayer. And that was hard. There were 8 children and a dad and mom, and people were out milking cows and bringing them in and getting ready and running out the door to school. But my mother always had a breakfast. We said a prayer. We knelt on our chairs, knelt by our chairs, and said prayers together. And it was always scary because Dad would call on me to say the prayer once in a while, rotate through the family, and I'd always be a little afraid, but it certainly was a good experience for us. We prayed for each other, and so we were concerned for each other. And I think the prayers and the meals together, for me, when I grew up and when I raised my family, that was important. That kept us together the best, I felt like. We did not have family home evening when I grew up. Nobody told us to write in our journal. Nobody told us to read our scriptures daily. We only fasted 1 meal a day. We just went without breakfast Sunday morning, and then came home and was just going without a meal. Didn't learn anything different until I went to college. And so the gospel, you grow in concepts, but I really think that's very important in our lives, to have some family time together every day as much as possible. So does that take care of everything?
I think so.
Unless there's anything else you want to say.
Well, I could go on. I have written my personal history and have told some stories in there. And your sister Katie, she's read that and she said, "Grandma, I think if you and I had grown up together, we'd have been best friends." Oh, isn't that a sweet compliment? She said, "I think we'd have been best friends." And I had some best friends, and they still are today. We call each other on the phone occasionally and go see each other. We used to eat together, meet in Salt Lake. We're all getting too blind and too deaf and too crippled, so we just have to talk on the phone.
Well, at least you can do that.
At least we can do that. It's been so kind of you to come and listen to me just go on.
That's what we came for.